Donald Trump is not president, at least not yet, but the director of the CIA is already vowing to ignore a President Trump's call for torture. CIA Director John Brennan saying the U.S. will not waterboard even if any president demands it. But Trump has made waterboarding part of his campaign strategy.
They chop off heads and they drown people in cages with 50 in a cage, in big steel, heavy cages, drop them right into the water, drown people. And we can't waterboard, and we can't do anything. And you know, we're playing on different fields, and we have a huge problem with ISIS, which we can't beat. And the reason we can't beat them is we won't use strong tactics, whether it's this or other things.
Former CIA Director James Woolsey goes on the record. Good evening, sir.
Good to see you.
Donald Trump has slightly walked some of this back by saying that he would only do it if it's legal, if he had authority to do that. Your thought about this, because now he's got a battle with the CIA director.
Well, when Madison and his colleagues were putting the Constitution together that hot summer in Philadelphia in 1787, I don't remember anybody incorporating in Article 2 that the CIA director could overrule the president. They didn't even have a CIA director at the time.
So he's just acting big and tough, Brennan.
Well, it's one thing for him to disagree with a policy and say that he disagrees with it or agrees with it. It's another for him to say, for John Brennan to say that he would not take an action even if he were ordered by the president to do so. And it seems to me that depends on whether or not waterboarding is or is not torture. And there's a real legal argument about this. There are two legitimate views. I think people who think it is torture would have to admit it's a very strange kind of torture, because it's torture that we submit all of our Navy SEALs and other special forces to. They go through waterboarding, and we don't pull out their fingernails. The same thing, there were a couple of 3 journalists who went out and got themselves waterboarded during the controversy a few years ago so they could write articles. And I don't know any journalists who went out and had their fingernails pulled out so they could write about that. So waterboarding is different. We only did it a large number of times to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and it produced a good deal of useful information. If a terrorist is sitting on a knowledge about where a nuclear weapon is in Manhattan, and if it's detonated, can kill millions of people, and the only way to get at him is to waterboard him, as was the case with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, it seems to me, Mr. Trump, Mr. Brennan ought to take another look at that.
Well, the CIA director has a little bit of a problem. He's been rather squishy on the topic since the beginning. At his confirmation hearing, he refused to say whether or not waterboarding was torture. So, I mean, he's been all over the place. I think the thing that was so weird, I mean, first of all, he's not going to be CIA director if it's President Trump, I take it. He's going to get fired pretty fast. I imagine that pretty fast. But, I mean, it is, I mean, the odd thing is that he's speaking out and saying this, that he'd go against a presidential order.
Well, I think that's really just completely unacceptable. But waterboarding is complicated, and there's a legitimate argument on both sides of this. And but I don't think one legitimate argument is I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, regardless of what the president orders me to do.
Why is he speaking out? What's your thought? I mean, like, why does he just stay out of this fight? Why? I mean, there's so many food fights going on right now. Why did he have to get into this one?
I don't know. I can't understand why one needs to get into this if one is the CIA director.
I mean, that's what strikes me as so peculiar, is that, you know, the CIA director should be quiet.
Well, they should be quiet in more circumstances even than that. One of the reasons we are seeing some of our sources go away is whenever we succeed in stealing some secrets, we start bragging about it to the press, and that's just nuts.
Nice to see you, sir. Always nice to see you.
Good to see you, Greg.